Okay, in an elevator, you have two sets of doors. The doors to the death box that you're standing in. You don't like elevators, we get it. What it do, YouTube? I'm Ricky. And finally, the Rick has come back to YouTube. First of all, we would like to thank you, the YouTube community, for getting us up to 50 subscribers. We know that for most people, 50 subs isn't a lot, but it's a lot to us. And even though we don't upload that much, it's very much appreciated. Now, other me, if I were to tell you that we'd be talking more about Black history, what would you think the conversation would entail? Civil rights and groundbreaking entertainers. And you would be mostly correct, but you know who doesn't get a lot of recognition? Black inventors. Well, no, they don't. Not that they're not recognized at all, they just don't get a lot of recognition. And with all the Black history programs at churches and schools and in the community, they'll mention the most famous ones in a little short blurb, but it's almost always about civil rights and entertainers. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, we can't go over all of them because that's an awfully long list. So we're going to do like a top 10 kind of thing of the inventions that you may not have known were invented by Black people. I mean, we know about the well-known Black inventors like Garrett Morgan, who invented the gas mask and the improved traffic light, and George Washington Carver with what he did in agriculture, most notably peanut butter. So we're not going to include those. I tried to find some of the lesser known ones. We're also not going to include in this top 10 this one inventor. Because if we included this one inventor, then all of his inventions would probably be the top 10. You know who I'm talking about. Mr. Granville T. Woods. That's right, the Black Edison. Dude was so profound and prolific in what he did with communication systems and the railway systems that Thomas Edison himself tried to sue the man for the things he came up with. And when Edison lost in court, and we're talking about the 1890s here, he tried to hire Woods to work for his company, and Woods refused. And that's how he became known as the Black Edison. You know in the movie theaters how the lights dim down before the movie starts? Yeah, Woods did that. Quite possibly one of the greatest inventors that ever lived. Indeed. Okay, you ready? Number 10, Alexander Miles. Now, while he gets credit for this invention, the story about how he came up with it has changed over the generations. Okay. Now, as the story goes, he and his daughter Grace were on an elevator and the girl fell down the shaft. Now, even though John Meeker invented the automatic elevator door system where the doors were open automatically, people still had to manually open and close the doors to the shaft. What? Really? Okay, in an elevator, you have two sets of doors. The doors to the death box that you're standing in. You don't like elevators, we get it. And to the shaft itself. That's the tunnel that the elevator goes up and down in. So if someone was to not close the shaft door, someone could fall in. So Mr. Miles invented a device that allowed the elevator doors and the shaft doors to open and close at the same time. And people never really notice it because of that. That is two sets of doors. Okay. Number 9, the ice cream scoop. Mr. Alfred Corrali, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. In 1897, while he was working in Pennsylvania, working at a hotel, Mr. Corrali noticed that the ice cream servers were struggling while using spoons and ladles to get ice cream into the cones. Because the ice cream was sticking to the spoons and ladles, the server would either have to use a second spoon or use their actual fingers to get the ice cream into the scoops. Ugh. So he came up with a device that would unstick the ice cream without having to use a separate device. You know when you press the little trigger and the little metal thing goes underneath to take the ice cream out? Yeah, that. So, unfortunately, he never profited it from it. Did he go broke? I don't know, but he did die in a car crash in 1920. Number 8. We're going to put two people down for the same concept, but applied in different ways. Okay, you know those beds that are tucked in the walls that fold down when you need them? The Murphy bed. After William Murphy? Well, William Murphy didn't invent what we know as the Murphy bed. He just made it famous. Okay, around 1885, Sarah Good actually came up with folding a bed and converting it into a secondary purpose like a cabinet or a desk, because back then the living spaces were pretty tight. Now, Murphy came up with Murphy made the concept famous by tucking the bed into a closet to hide it, so he could pull it out to entertain a woman, because shacking up was frowned upon back in the day. Really? Was it? Come on, man. Even the honeymooners and the Flintstones had separate beds, and they were married. But there was also Leonard Bailey, who came up with a method for folding a bed on itself for the military to use. and we come to know and love those as sofa beds.
Wow. Okay.
I know, right? Number 7, the Super Soaker. This iconic water gun was created by Lonnie Johnson. In 1982, in his basement, Mr. Johnson, a NASA engineer, was working on a project for a cooling system that used water instead of Freon. So when he hooked up a hose to the faucet and accidentally shot water across the room, he thought, hey, I could turn that into a water gun. So over time, while he was working on other projects for NASA and the Air Force, he eventually built this water gun out of plexiglass. Then he gave it to his daughter to test it out with other kids at the Air Force Base. Now, up until that point, water guns were just plastic pistol-shaped spray bottles. So naturally, she just yeeted everybody.
GG's.
I know, right? It took him a while to come up with the finances to get it off the ground. In the meantime, he added a huge 2-liter bottle to it, which is pretty much like adding a banana clip to a pistol. He pitched it to the Laramie Toy Company, and the rest is history. Thing took off like a rocket.
Or a pressure-filled water gun.
Number 6, dry cleaning. Now, way back in 1821, Thomas Jennings invented what he called dry scouring. And I want to say that he was the first black person to even be granted a patent. He was born free in New York. Now, pre-Civil War, if an enslaved person came up with an invention and were fortunate enough to get it patented, the patent belonged to the slave's owner.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah, there's a whole other story about that we won't get into. But it ends with a lot of black people inventing a lot of things that we'll never know about because it wasn't properly documented. Anyway, how he came up with it and how the process actually worked was difficult to find. But it was enough for him, a black man, to get a patent, which, as we mentioned, was very difficult in the 1800s, especially for a free black man. Number 5, the Street Mailbox. Yes, those rounded off blue metal boxes that you put your mail in, those were invented by Mr. Philip Downing. There's not a lot of creative history behind this one, but back in 1891, he didn't just come up with a box that people drop letters in, because if that's all it was, then people would steal the box, steal the letters, or the weather would get to it. So he made it out of metal to protect it against the elements, bolted it to the ground so no one would steal it, and made the door more secure so that it would be very difficult for people to reach in and steal the letters. Number 4.
There's still 4 that's better than that?
Get ready. Number 4. The home security system.
Really?
Simply Safe, Arlo, ADT, they should all give credit to a nurse named Marie Van Britten Brown. Try saying that 10 times fast. In 1960 Queens, New York, the crime rate was so high due to the response time of the police. So she and her husband Albert, they put holes in the door so they can see who was outside before opening the door. They eventually put cameras in those holes. But instead of running wires all over the house to monitor the cameras, they used a wireless system to stream the video to any television, and it had the ability for a 2-way microphone. That sound familiar?
Yeah. Ring.
But that wasn't all.
There's more?
Bruh. She was able to implement the ability to unlock the door remotely and the ability to alert authorities with the push of a button. And this was in the 1960s. And that, my friend, was the invention of the first closed circuit security system that thousands of businesses use today.
Wow, the last 3 might be too overwhelming, man.
Number 3, the cartridge-based home console.
Nope. Nope. No. You're misinformed on that one.
No, I'm not.
No.
Yes, you are. The first home-based gaming console was the Magnavox Odyssey, invented by Ralph Baer. Indeed it was. But until Gerald Lawson came up with this invention, home gaming consoles had the games built in, meaning when you bought the console, all you had was what came with it. So in 1976, Gerald and his team came up with cartridges that contained the games that the console read.
And the name of this console?
The Fairchild Channel F, named after the company he was working for when he invented it. It didn't take off commercially because the next year, the Atari 2600 just swallowed it up. But Mr. Lawson definitely revolutionized the gaming industry with this invention.
It's information overload, man.
Well, go get a towel because the next 2. Okay, number 2, the golf tee.
Are you serious?
Indeed I am. Not 40 years ago, people still weren't even allowed at some golfing country clubs. And the very device that was instrumental to their game was invented by a black man named Dr. George Grant. Yeah,
doctor.
He was a doctor. so he had money. He also had his own micro golf course. And up until 1899, when he patented a tiny wooden spike with a piece of rubber on the end to hold the ball, people would take wet sand, make a small mound out of it, and put the ball on top. Before Grant, everybody was hitting it out of the bunker. Okay. So when he developed this little wooden spike to put directly into the ground, not only did it speed up the game, but people were no longer swatting chunks of sand when they teed off. Even then, he didn't capitalize on it. He just made them and gave them to family and friends. It wasn't until 1920 when the Ready tee came out where people would start using it worldwide. Now, unlike a lot of other black inventors, he was given complete full credit for this invention. I mean, any golfing museum you go to, you're going to see his name.
Okay, and I don't think I'm ready for number one. I'm not ready.
No, you're not.
Oh, Lord.
Because up until this point, all of the inventions were created either out of necessity or better productivity, the Super Soaker notwithstanding. But our number one was created out of pure spite.
Go on.
You know how you got French fries that's fried potato slices that's crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside?
Yeah.
Well, before that, people would eat their French fries in discs instead of slices.
Ooh, I think I know where this is heading.
Don't spoil it. Now, the story itself is questionable, as a lot of people have claimed to have debunked it. But to me, there was enough truth in it to at least mention it. Okay? Because if you Google this invention, this man's name will almost always pop up. Okay, so the story goes, and we don't know what year exactly, that it was just in the early 1800s, a cook by the name of George Crumb sent his fried potatoes out to a customer who sent them back because they complained that they were too thick. Naturally, he's the cook, so he thought they were perfect. So out of pure spite, Mr. Crumb sliced the potatoes paper thin, fried them up, and sent them back out. It was a hit. And that's the story that a lot of people grew up on believing was the invention of the potato chip.
Wow.
Again, a lot of people have accepted this as being a fable or an old wives' tale, but based on our research, there are far more truthers than our deniers. But take it as you will. If he didn't invent it, he had the best story for inventing it.
Noted.
So did you learn something here?
If you want your kid to be an inventor, name him George.
That's funny. Coincidental, but funny nonetheless. There you go, YouTube. That's our top 10. There's a lot more that I wanted to include, but in research, we found that a lot of inventions that were credited to African Americans on websites and posters were just significant improvements on existing inventions. Yeah, I know we mentioned the elevator doors, but you have people crediting Newman with the invention of the airbrush when she improved on its manufacture and longevity that we use to this very day. And then you got George Sampson that was credited with inventing the clothes dryer, but he improved on an existing clothes dryer where your clothes didn't come out smelling like smoke. But there are some websites that attributed Augustus Jackson with inventing ice cream. But he just found better ways of manufacturing and preserving it, such as adding salt to the recipe. Very recognizable contributions, but they just didn't make our top 10. If we could have done a top 100, trust me, we would have did it, but it would have been a really long video. But if your top 10 didn't match our top 10, feel free to put them in the comments below so we can all get educated on the history of black inventors. Like, share, and subscribe, and be sure to hit that notification bell so you can get all the updates as they happen. And I've challenged myself. Have you? Over and out.